Oh, there we go. We're live.
We're
Perfect.
live, baby.
So Tommy, thank you for coming on here today. You messaged me, and before that, we're talking a little bit about life and how life is happening, and you're soon to be married, October 2022, but you're 25, right? So it's like you don't need to rush into parenthood or anything like that. It's good to enjoy your being, with your significant other. So, and you guys just moved in.
Yeah.
I understand. How's that going?
Oh man, it's so good. It's so good. And before we came on here, you said it's a really smart decision to move in and see what the dynamic is like being together all the time. And man, it's just like being with my best friend all the time. It's the best. And she's my biggest supporter when I'm having a tough day. She's always there, of course. When she's having a tough day, I want nothing more than to be there for her. And it's just been so fun, man. So yeah, you're right. We're young and we've got time before we think about kids, but we're really enjoying life right now, man. It's been so good.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, it's I funny story. Jen, who's we're engaged. She's not on paper my wife, but for all intents and purposes, she is.
Yeah.
Except for the ceremonial aspect, I guess. But anyways, so we started dating in in April, something like that. And it's sort of like, I was doing whatever. And then she had this condo and she's like, I want to rent out my apartment. I was like, oh, okay. And so this is about August, let's say. I want to rent my apartment out. Oh, cool. Like, great. Yeah. And my friend, I'm going to move in with her in January. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, why don't you live with me until then? Like, why not? And then January comes around and you can move back in with your friend. Well, needless to say, she moved in with me and come around, I don't know, January 3rd. I was like, well, I guess you're not moving back in with your friend. And she's like, nope. And now we have a kid together. So there you go.
Nice.
Right? Like in our lives, we can have these grandiose visions of, I'm going to find this person. It's going to be magical, all the stuff. And it's like, maybe that happens, or maybe it just happens. And you're like, whoa, that's crazy how I got to this moment in my life. And much like you, I couldn't ask to be with anybody else. Well, I wouldn't be able to be with anybody else. They wouldn't be able to tolerate me. So, my wife.
That's how I feel too.
Jen is an amazing person, and she's a huge influence behind what I do, and encourages me as well. So you came to me with a question. You were asking me about counseling and working with children.
That is right, man. Yeah, it's definitely, school counseling is something that I've been thinking of possibly pursuing for a little while now. Because as you can imagine, so for the listeners, I've been on your show before. We've had me and you, I feel like every time we talk, we always have great conversations and we go down these rabbit holes that are freaking amazing. And then we tie it all back into some really good stuff. And so obviously we both really care about mental health, and you clearly have a passion for children. And I also love working with children too. I've never done so professionally, but I'm always the guy at parties who's playing with the kids. I want to be the one throwing the football around or kicking a soccer ball with the kids, having some fun. And that tied with my passion for mental health and just being of help to other people is kind of what sparked that potential interest. So I thought, who better to reach out to than Rob Grant, the man himself, to hear more about what it's like to be a school counselor. So it's kind of leaving it open-ended, but I'd love to see kind of where this goes, dude, and just hear what your experience has been like.
Yeah, well, there's always a reason why, like in life, if you can answer the why question, you're on your way. Like, why am I doing this? So funny that this is all, speaking of full circle, there's this guy on here, RNG Gaming, I met a few days ago at the casino. And he's like, I self-excluded myself from the casino, so you won't see me there anytime soon, which I hardly ever go. But anyways, it's really cool guy. Thanks for joining us. But again, it's like the why. Why do we do what we do? You know, why do we end up at the casino? Is it for entertainment? Is it for financial gain? You know, why is it that we do the things that we do? So that's always the question that I ask people when they're, you know, going on an endeavor, when they're like, I want to do this. Perfect. Why do you want to do that? So you have an interest in children and an interest in mental health. That's your why, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. For sure.
Right. So again, it's like, why not turn that, there's the why again, why not turn that into something that you do? So the job that you currently do, you're in finance or something, correct?
Dude, you got a really good memory. Yeah, that's right. I'm a financial analyst right now.
Right. Do you enjoy that job?
I do. I would say that I'm incredibly grateful for it. Work with tons of great people. It's not necessarily the thing that motivates me. And I imagine that I would be more motivated by something I'm more interested in, like mental health and helping kids. So that's really why it's kind of been on my radar for a little bit.
Okay. So it sounds like you kind of want to infuse your interests, your passions with, you know, your career, right? You want to try and triangulate things. So it's not like you're wearing different hats. It's kind of, is that what I'm sort of hearing? Like,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's totally okay to not do that. I think right now there's so much talk. I don't know, man. I feel like so many people talk about how you need to pursue your passion for your career and make money off of what you're passionate about. And that's not always the case. That not every single person needs to do that. I, however, would like that. So, see, I guess without going on and on and on with my answer, to respond to you, yes.
yeah. And you also have a very good point, is that like, for some people, a job, like there's something good in just in work itself, right? Like it's, you know, it's a good thing to do, obviously, to have a job, right? And we
Yeah.
will always need people, you know, we'll always need farmers, we'll always need trades people, you know, we will always need people to do certain jobs. And there's lots of people that are super passionate about that. Like, you know, I started gardening during COVID, and to see like something that you've planted grow is like, that's pretty cool. So I have a lot of respect for, you know, farmers and things like that. But I also know that if I was a carpenter, I would lose my mind, right? Because that's not what I'm good at. That's
Yeah.
not what I'm good at. And there does have to be, you know, like in the groove, like a record, when you're in the groove, you
Yeah.
have to be kind of in your groove, right? Like, for example, if I was an accountant, I would also lose my mind, right? Sounds like accounting is something that you might be quite good at, but it's not necessarily something that, like, you know, turns you on, kind of thing. Whereas working with people and kids, that gets you fired up, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a really good way to put it, man. It's I mentioned the word, it's not necessarily the thing that motivates me. And I think like all of us as humans, we need to go after something that's constantly pushing us to get better. And
Yeah.
hopefully my boss doesn't hear this, but I would say that being a financial analyst isn't the thing. I'm not motivated to become the best financial analyst I can be. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Um, However, if I'm working with children every single day because I have a passion and I care big time about
Yeah.
kids, I would work to be the best counselor I could be to support those kids as best I could, because I couldn't go home and live with myself if I didn't, you know?
And you know what? That's a great point, Tommy, because the other thing about life is that it's not exactly realistic to be 100% every day. You know what I
Mm,
mean? If you were 100% every day, then 100% it would start to feel like 80% because you're so
mm,
used to it, right?
true. Yeah.
So something about being a school counselor is more like golf than
Mm,
anything. And I'm not a good golfer. In fact, I'm horrible at the sport. Just like I'm horrible at the casino. Just ask my friend RNG Gaming. He had to give me money. He had to give me money. I was so
Oh,
bad.
what a good
Anyways,
guy though.
he's a good guy, man. He's a hell of a good guy. But my point is that being a school counselor it's not like what am I trying to equate it to? It's not the same as like, say, working in an assembly line, factory work, that there's, A will always go to B, B will always go to C. There's a lot of other stuff going on. And you're working with people, and people aren't something that any of us can really necessarily master. It's something we can understand, but to be a master of people, I don't know. That sounds almost a little bit insidious, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, but my job is like, there's some days when it's like, oh my God. And then there's other days when it's like, I'm going to do my best. But at the same time, I'm tired. I'm hungry. I got things going on in my life. Right. So it's, and the other thing is that here's the other huge part about being a counselor is, if you can't shut it off, your chances of burning out are significantly higher. So I've been learning a lot about Buddhism, and in Buddhism, they talk about critical distance. So closeness, but also critical distance. So you get close to something, but not so close that you're, say, a threat or whatever, you're too involved in it, but also not so far away that you don't understand the human capacities of things. Again, right? If you're too distant from somebody, you'll never understand why they do the things they do. But if you try to understand them, closeness, right, you'll start to see the why. But you have to be careful about getting too close to the why, because, then it can affect you, right? So that's why counseling is such a unique job, but it requires you to be truly human, I think, right? And you are a very caring person, just like I'm a very caring person. And so that's where it can be kind of difficult for someone like you and I when we first start out, is we see these things that young people are experiencing in their lives, and it hurts our feelings, and we go home and we think about it. But the reality is that if we just go home and ruminate on things and stay up all night worrying about them, we won't be of very much use the next day, right? Oh, I can't hear you. I think I muted you. That's why. Unmute mic. Oh, maybe you're muted. Oh, your mic isn't connected. Try unplugging it and plugging it back in. It's IT help right there for you. He's just figuring it out. 1322. Can you guys all hear me? Friday. Ah, there he is.
All right.
Hello.
Can you hear me right now?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I hope that doesn't happen again. I just got a pop-up on the top of my top right screen. What am I saying? On the top right of my screen that said that the mic input failed or something. I don't know. That was weird. Anyways, we're back. Dude, sorry that happened right in the middle of you
Oh
talking.
man, no, it's technology. It's imperfect.
You're right. You're right. Just like us.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So, where was I? Oh, I started talking about like knowing boundaries.
Yes.
Boundaries is very important in any job where you work with people. Boundaries is a fundamental rule in what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, even in banking, right? I mean, professional boundaries and things like that. So, I mean, that's a big one for anybody who's working in a mental health capacity at any age, right? Because if you're doing your job well, you're allowing people to be vulnerable. And in our society, good Lord, that is the last place anybody wants to be, right? I mean, you just go on any chat group and see how people talk to each other, and you'll see that we have a problem being vulnerable in our society, I sometimes think.
Oh yeah, that's the truth, man. That's the truth. And you're so right. My younger sister, she just graduated from college with a degree in history and secondary ed. So
Mm. Try it without just. Are you on a laptop? That's okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh.
oh man.
You
You take a few months off podcasting, and then all of a sudden you don't know how to use a microphone anymore. That's just how it goes,
did you figure out what the problem was?
I hope so, man. So one thing I noticed was that the error was coming from GarageBand because I had GarageBand up in the background. So before coming on the
Oh,
mic, and so when it dropped on GarageBand for whatever reason, it dropped from here too. So I closed out of GarageBand, hoping that it's good now. If it happens again, no idea what I'll do.
well, just use it. Are you on a laptop?
Yeah. So next time, I guess maybe I can just unplug my mic and
Yeah, it
use
doesn't
my
matter. I
use
mean,
my
it's
computer
fine.
audio. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for now, we're good. So where we were at though is I was going to talk about my younger sister's teaching internship experience.
Right.
So by the way, if you do end up posting this as a podcast, best of luck to you with this editing.
Oh, it's fine. I wrote it down 13, 22, and 17 or something. It's
Oh, you're a smart man. All right, good call. So where I was gonna go was my younger sister graduated. Now she has the degree to be like a middle school or a high school history teacher.
Mhm.
And when she was interning at a local school, for those listening, I'm in Portland, Maine. She obviously wouldn't share kids' names because that's illegal. However, she would, just share parts of her day and some of the difficulties that some of the kids were dealing with and amount of the amount of kids that really had rough home lives.
Right.
It blew my mind. And it made me think about how, because I come from a pretty healthy family, I'm very close with both of my parents and really blessed to have them as well as both my sisters are great.
Mhm.
But it just made me think about how back when I was going through school, I'm sure that same stuff was happening in other kids' lives around me, and I just had no idea.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so the need for school counselors, whether the school systems know it or not, or whether they can afford it right now or not, is clearly through the roof because there's just so much of a need.
And I think that you're right to diagnose that there's always been a need there, that these things have
Yeah.
always been happening.
Mm,
Right. I mean, being a parent is not easy, right?
yeah.
Especially in the world that we live in. I mean, you know, hundreds, thousands of years ago, what we would do would just be to be with our children, right?
Yeah.
We would,
Hmm.
the saying is true. It takes a village, right? But in that village was also the parents of that child.
Mm,
Nowadays, you can have single parent families, and that parent is having to work, 2 jobs to afford things for their kids, right? I mean, it's just what kids need is they just need somebody who's there for them, that believes in them,
mm,
a healthy attachment.
mm,
We talk about, but a healthy attachment doesn't mean that the kid just gets to do whatever they want either. A healthy attachment also means that there's rules, parameters, um, put in place that makes sense, because kids need that. They need structure, right?
mm,
And that's what being a school counselor can do. And you're right. I mean, we need school counselors, but what we also need are quality school counselors, right?
mm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know about you, but I had school counselors back in my day, and I didn't have a relationship with them. So
Mm,
when my dad, when things happened in my life when I was going in high school, I didn't really want to open up to them, because for one, being, you know, we talk about toxic masculinity and things like
mm,
that. What does it mean to be a man? All men don't cry, they're stoic, bullshit like that, right? But anyways, that was very prevalent in my mind when I was a teenager, of what it means to be a man. And that means to, suppress your feelings. And it wasn't until I had a teacher in grade 11 who he, really took an interest in me, and really impacted my life, that I wanted to become a teacher. But then I realized that, I don't, it's not teaching that, because then I got into teaching, and I had this one class, and it was like it was 12 kids, 14 kids, and like 10 of them were in foster homes. It was a very tough
mm,
classroom. And I realized that, maybe teaching isn't really for me. Maybe like what these kids really need is a bond with somebody. They need a connection,
mm.
right? And I felt that I could develop that better. I don't know if that's the right word, but anyways, I could develop that more so in counseling than I could as a teacher. But in becoming a counselor, it's a long road, man. Like in Canada, I had to take my master's, and it's like,
That was one of the things I wanted to ask you too, because in
yeah,
the US, like I have a finance degree. I couldn't go and be a school counselor. So the reason for some hesitancy for me is it's another investment, you know. It's another $40,000 minimum to go and get it. So I wanted to ask if you went back to school. So you did.
I did. Yeah, I had to, and it was not cheap,
Hmm.
but I mean, the thing about having your master's, though, is that you can apply that in a lot of different fields. Whereas if you just get like a certificate, it doesn't open as many doors, right? Like for teachers, you could either so once you get your degree and you get your teaching certificate, you could get your what's called your PB plus 15, or you could get your master's.
Okay.
Your PB plus 15 is just, it's extra training and you get extra pay, but you don't get a master's,
Okay.
right? And the
Hmm.
thing about a master's is you could take that anywhere, almost anywhere, kind of idea. Like you put it on your resume, And people say, oh, this person has a master's, versus you put PB plus 15 on your resume, and people who aren't in the education field would be like, what the hell is that? Right.
Yeah. I've never heard of it.
Exactly. There you go. Right. So that's why you have your undergrad, your bachelor's in finance.
Yeah.
Right. So I think finance is like something you could teach in high school. So my understanding is that you could probably apply for like teacher training, which is a year in most places. You get that, you become a teacher, and then you go back and get your master's. That's one way that you could do it.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because my younger sister, she was one of the first, if not the first person to mention that I'd be a good school counselor. And she's also mentioned too that they have this program. I forget the name of it, but there's something in America where it's that 1 year thing you just referenced. Basically, somebody with any undergrad degree, as long as it's a bachelor's, can go and do this 1 year training and get some sort of a degree or certificate to teach. I forget if it was a degree or certificate, but definitely of interest to me too. And it just has me think back to, I remember, and this is really where I want this conversation to go, but it popped up in my head, so maybe it'll relate to some people who listen. When I was going through high school, it was senior year, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to go to school for, which is like the worst. I remember I said to my buddies at one point, I was like, yeah, I think, being a math teacher would be kind of cool. And I remember all of them were just like, dude, teaching? Pff, that's so lame. Why would you want to do that? And, being like a 17-year-old, very influential, which is probably the wrong word, but easily influenced is what I mean. I definitely didn't pursue that route. Now I look back, I'm like, yeah, I don't really love math, so I wouldn't have wanted to teach math. But I'm also like, oh, well, I probably could have been a good teacher. Still could. But anyway, so interesting that you brought that up. So that, like I mentioned earlier, that's definitely something that I've been thinking quite a bit about, because I still have student loans from my undergrad degree.
Right.
They ain't cheap.
No.
And then adding on to that would make it more difficult. Me and my fiance, we could handle it, which is a conversation we've had, which is good. But you still want to be smart before jumping into something,
100%.
obviously. One thing that I was interested in hearing from you, because you said, it's very clear that this need for school counselors has probably always been there since we've had this formal education system. Now, and you said you've experienced some school counselors who maybe weren't the best when you were a child, and you actually grew closer with a teacher. I have no recollection. Maybe I just didn't know they were there, but I had no recollection of any school counselors in my school district, like in any of the schools I went to up until high school. And then, of course, once you're in high school, unless maybe you like openly reach out to them for help with anxiety or something like that, the only thing I thought they did was prepare you for college and help you choose classes.
Right.
And so that was one of the big things that I wanted to ask you about, because, my understanding is you still work with elementary school kids, right?
Yeah. I worked as a high school counselor for 2 years.
Okay. So I would love to
year
hear
and a
kind
half,
of
year and a half. Yeah.
I'd love to hear the difference between the two, because, I
Sure.
don't want to push kids to college. I would want to be somebody who, I want to be somebody who, exactly like what you said earlier, is there for them, is not there to fix them, is not there to try to help them, is just there to be there, to be with them, and to be a person that allows them to be heard. So is that kind of been your experience in elementary? Did you have that experience in high school, or how did those kind of differentiate?
Well, that's a great question. And a counselor, I think of myself as like a Swiss Army knife, right? It's we all have different needs. And that's what it kind of comes down to. It's like, what are you hoping to get from this, right? Because the other thing is that as an elementary counselor, I'm between two schools, and I service both schools, the entire student population. So that's upwards of 1,000 kids. in 1 week.
Wow.
Obviously, I can't see 1,000 kids in a week, right? So
Yeah.
there is a bit of a triage involved. Like, certain kids you have to see every week,
Mm.
based on the circumstance, or obviously try to. I mean, every everything in life you do your best, right? I try to avoid shoulds and
Yeah.
shouldn'ts and things like that, because that can be really hard on your well-being. But you do your best, right? And as an elementary counselor, predominantly what you're doing is you're working as a counselor.
Mm.
So, and that means maybe you do some CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Like, you try to understand what's going on for this young person, and you hear them out, and the goal is to get them to have some self-reliance, right?
Yep.
And the difference between that and high school is, in high school you get a lot of other stuff that is important, but gets in the way of doing that kind of the work that you just do in elementary school, right? I mean,
Mm.
the one necessary evil of being a school counselor, elementary school counselor, and a high school counselor is you write what are called IEPs in the Surrey School District, which is an individual education plan. And it just means that if a kid has a certain designation, be it behavioral or um, cognitive adaptations or modifications in their learning, whatever it is, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they have a letter attached to a certain need that they need, which again I think is kind of interesting, because I think we all have unique needs. I mean, we could all benefit from one of these IEPs, but the reality is that it's not realistic, right? So anyways, I try to avoid these IEPs, just because it's like, it can get in the way of working with kids. But again, necessary evil. Anyways, so that's the one thing that I do. The rest of what I do as an elementary counselor is I work with kids. It's great. Now, a high school counselor, they work with kids, young people, their needs, but also, like you say, course changes, planning for university, right? And those things are huge, right? Course changes. Oh my God. At the beginning of September and January, it's like nobody's having fun here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
At least not me. I mean, sometimes it was kind of cool because it was like math, and I'd try and find something, but it felt a little bit thankless, right? Whereas, when you're helping somebody to understand what's going on within them, that can be incredibly rewarding. Like, there's been times when I'm like, dude, I'm pretty sure I was the difference in that person's life in that moment in time, and maybe they'll carry that with them for some time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's some cool stuff right
And
there.
and that's me giving back the gift that was given to me. Somebody made a lot of time. My teacher, he made a lot of time for me. He still does.
Oh,
Right?
wow. You guys are still connected?
Oh yeah, yeah. He's
Oh, man. That's really cool.
he's a great guy. I mean, he's in many regards, I see him in a father figure, sort of like, not the same,
Yeah.
obviously, but different. I mean, he's had an impact
Yeah.
on my life,
Yeah.
right?
That's so
So
great, man.
you can be that in someone's life, and that's a rewarding thing, because it takes courage to be kind, and the world needs a lot more kindness, right?
Amen to that, brother. 100%.
Yeah, and you can be that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's very
Because
true.
who else is doing it, man? I was
Who
on
else is doing
YouTube,
it? Rob
and
Grant.
well, okay, yeah, I'm one person. I want more people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Fred Rogers, man, he's the GOAT
Fred Rogers. I need to look this guy up. He's a school
Oh,
counselor.
Mr. Rogers, man, Mr.
Oh,
Rogers.
that I didn't realize his first name was Fred. I always just knew him
Oh,
as
bro,
Mister.
he's I love him. I mean, he's like, and you know what I mean. He's an upgraded human. I'll never be Mr. Rogers. I'll always be Robert Grant, but I admire that guy, man. Anyways, the world needs more people like that, right? And I go on YouTube sometimes, and the stuff that's on there, I'm like, what the
dude? Oh my
what
gosh.
is this? It's garbage.
I know.
But
There's
Tommy, don't confuse yourself. There's always been garbage out there. I just think now it's a lot less monitored. Like think about it. 20 years ago, we'd watch TV. Usually that was like to watch TV it's an open circuit thing. You know what I mean? Like somebody could come and watch with you. But when you're on one of these things, and this is a value judgment, but it can be a little bit more of a closed circuit. And the world needs more open circuits. Right? You know, just like this conversation is an open circuit.
Now, when you say open circuit, you mean other people are invited into it?
Yeah. It's community building. Right? It's an opportunity to grow community. I mean, when I have my headphones in, because I love music, but when I have my headphones in, that's kind of a closed circuit. Not kind of. That is a closed circuit activity. If I'm on the bus and I got my AirPods in and I'm rocking out to yacht rock or whatever, it's closing me off from engaging with other people in the world. And there is nothing better than engaging with other people in the world. If you can do it without offending them, which can be more. Might be easier. Yeah. Right?
No, yeah, I think that's a really good point. When you were talking about the stuff on YouTube, it just made me think of how sometimes I probably go on Twitter once a day, maybe. I don't normally tweet, send out maybe the occasional tweet, usually keep it pretty, it's obviously PG. It's usually pretty chill.
Yeah.
But I tend to just scroll through it only for a little bit. I don't get sucked in, thank God. I scroll through it just for the entertainment value of seeing all the crazy stuff that people are talking about on there and just all the rage. And to your point about like the open circuit thing, imagine if we were all surrounding somebody who was on a computer like we used to surround a TV together, and we see this person starting to type up this terrible tweet about something radical or just something really stupid. They're not going to tweet it, right? Because everybody else is going to be like, what the hell is wrong with you? But now that there's these closed circuits, to your point, it's almost like, and there's a lot more going on than just people finally being able to do these things on their own. However, it's almost like an insight into how much damage I think there is within us that hadn't been able to be expressed before. And when you think about it in terms like that, it's really sad and emphasizes back to what you said a little while ago, emphasizes the need for school counselors, for counselors in general, for mental health awareness, for people just learning how to be a vulnerable, open-minded human, whether that's through counseling or just through their upbringing. Like, we need more people like that. Like you said, we need more Mr. Rogers to just be there with people and help them heal from whatever shit they're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, okay. So were you ever bullied as a kid? I was. Were you ever?
Yeah, I was too. Yeah.
Okay. So this person, these individuals, whatever. Anyways, I always ask myself, why are you acting like that? There's usually a reason, right?
Yeah.
People don't just wake up one day and they're like, I'm going to be an ass, right? Like, I'm just going to be I'm going to be a complete jerk, right?
Yeah.
There's some sort of there's an antecedent to what's going on. There's something that happened prior to this, right? And again, when you try to understand people, like it's like, there's cyberbullying is a big one, but it's like, okay, well, rather than just like, stop doing that. What's wrong with you? It's like, why are you talking to people like that? Oh, because
Yeah.
because your brother beats you. You know what I mean? Like, it might not even be a good reason, right? It might not be something that, I agree with or whatever, but you can understand it. And there's a lot of, okay, so for a young person, if their dog dies, that could be the biggest loss in their life. And to say, oh, it's a dog, get over it. It's like, how helpful is that? Right? So
Yeah.
understanding that people's reasoning is relative to their experiences, right? So, for a kid to lose their dog is the same as losing a family member, right? So he could grieve, just the same as somebody who's lost a parent or something, right? I'm just saying it's all relative. And it helps when we try to understand the individual in their circumstances and in the broader circumstances. And then it just makes for like, then they feel like they're being understood, right? Versus, oh, I feel stupid for feeling this way. But when you feel stupid, it doesn't encourage you to make better choices. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that young people need is they need, some encouragement. They need somebody just to listen to them rather than like me tell you what to do. Right. And it's crazy, man, because when I do this, when I get to sit there and be present with this young person, which, I mean, what a privilege. I'm getting paid money to sit down and listen to the future, right? And then you see the twinkle, you see their eyes kind of come alive when they know that I'm listening to them, when perhaps maybe, and it's no fault of anybody's, but because life is so busy, they feel like they've never had someone to listen to them. I'm not just saying I'm special here either. I'm saying this is what a person can do when you are present with a young person. We struggle with being present. I struggle with being present.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about my job is that I have to be present with this young person or I'm not doing my job well. Like if I'm like, oh yeah. Oh, I'm sorry that happened. Sorry, what? You know what I mean? Obviously my phone's off, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is when you watch media, watch how they portray the relationship between the adults, say, and the young people, right? Like there's that one show, I did not enjoy it, but 21 Reasons.
Oh, like 13 Reasons Why? Is that what you're thinking
13
of?
Reasons Why.
Okay.
It was like the way they portrayed the school counselor in that show. It's like, well, this guy's like an idiot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I like?
Yeah.
And then this is what people think that the reality is of young people. And it's like, well, this is melodramatic, but young people are going through some serious things and they don't know how to share it with other people. They don't know how to share it with older people because it's like we do this comparative thing like, oh, you think you got it so bad. And it's like, I don't know how helpful that is. So it all comes down to listening.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think that the point you made about the child losing a dog is a really important one to make because it just acknowledges that you don't need to apologize for any feeling that you have. You can explore why you had a certain feeling, but you shouldn't ask. You can ask, why do I feel this way in a form of exploration to see if maybe there's some healing that needs to happen there. But the fact that you felt a certain way in and of itself isn't bad. And when somebody doesn't meet you in that, um, that can be incredibly hard. So I think that the point that you make about, especially when it comes to grief, like everybody grieves differently, and there's no such thing as like this grief is worse to me than your grief was. You wouldn't understand. I mean, there's some of that in a sense. Like losing my fiance lost her mom like 4 days after we got engaged. And so that is, it's vastly different than losing your dog.
Of
At the
course.
same time, both of them are grief. And
Yes.
in both situations, you want to meet them there. If I had my own dog and say my dog passed away and it was after my fiance's mom passed away and I was crying and my fiance said to me, "Why are you so upset? I just lost my mom. That's only your dog." Like kind of exactly what you
Yeah.
said earlier. I'd be like, "What the heck? Like, come on
Yeah.
now." So we got to meet each other in those things. But um, to go, this is kind of going in a different direction, Rob. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and you kind of spoke a little bit about it earlier, was what does your day look like as a school
Mm.
counselor? And before I have you answer that, one of the reasons I ask is because what I picture, because I imagine I'd probably, if I had my choice, would want to be with elementary or middle school kids or something along those lines, younger. Um, However, a friend of mine, she was a social worker, so a little different at a local school,
Mhm.
and she's got a huge heart. I imagine that she'd be an incredible counselor, but she hated it as a social worker at the school because she was so busy. She was moving from one kid to the next, very
Yeah.
tight schedule, didn't even have time to write down notes from the kids, wasn't allowed to write notes while the kid was talking because, you want to be listening to the child and all these things. And she ended up leaving like less than a year, I think, after starting. Um,
Right.
so from your perspective, like what do your days look like? Do you experience that too, or do you feel like you have adequate time to devote to these kids who need you?
I mean, that is a great question. And I'll be honest, man, I know I'm doing a good job. So I'm gonna do what I'm doing. And if that means that I'm with this kid for an hour,
Mm,
because that's what this person needs, an hour and a half, I'll get to it.
mm,
But you are right. There's a bit of a triage involved here.
mm,
And you go where you're needed. And that's why being a school counselor is very different than having your own private practice. It's very
mm,
different because I really do see it as you are a mental health worker. You are like a nurse that's in a school or remember when we had nurses or whatever.
mm.
And when things happen, you got to go there. Right.
Yeah.
And so I can understand the burnout, and that's where the self-care piece comes in. And at the end of the day, you just tell yourself, man, I did the best that I could in the time that I was given, right?
Mm,
And there's other days when it's like, you know what, just loosen up a little bit, maybe read a bit on your practice. Pardon me, because there's so many different theories and pedagogies and things like that in counseling. It's like it's good to keep your mind fresh. And
mm,
meditating, man. Meditate. I
mm,
meditate. I try to every day. I try to either meditate or go for a walk.
mm.
But it really helps to get out of the building, right? Because otherwise it's just it could be a revolving door. So it's
Yeah.
good to get some space. And again, boundaries are huge. So it also really does depend on the school that you get too.
Yeah.
Some schools being, far busier than others.
Mm, yeah.
But
Makes a
that's
lot
the
of sense.
beautiful thing, right? Is if you get your master's in counseling, you don't necessarily have to be a school counselor. You can be a family systems counselor, right? Working with, children, adolescents, and adults. I mean, really, I just like working with people. But I mean, being a school counselor, it was like the natural thing to me. Will I do it the rest of my life? Probably not, but I will do something not so far off from what I'm doing. Right. I will never get into, who knows, but I can't see myself abandoning my post to become an electrician. There's obviously nothing wrong about electricians. That's a great job, but I just don't, or it's a great career. I just don't see myself doing that.
Yeah.
Right. Because I love working with people. And that's the biggest thing is if you have to enjoy working with people. Like if you just enjoy summers off, I'm not saying that you're like this, but some people if you just like the idea of summers off and Christmas is off and stuff like that, you're setting yourself up for 8.5 months of pure hell, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh,
but
yeah.
I would prefer, I prefer working with children. I just prefer working with kids. They keep me young, you know?
Yeah.
And they are incredibly resilient. Like some of the things that these young people have been through, because it's what they know, right? It's just like, dude, you are a titan. Like I have a lot of respect and admiration for you, young person, you know, because you're just, this is what you know, and you're not asking for apologies, right? You're just looking for a positive connection, right?
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is sometimes all I do is I play chess with kids. Right? Like it doesn't have to be heavy all the time. Right? And then you just ask, you know, like the other thing is making goals, right? As a counselor, it's very good to make goals. It's good to make goals at anything in life. So you have to diagnose what the goal is that the student wants to work on, right? So is it test anxiety? Is it attendance? Is it wandering thoughts, you know, anxious thoughts? Whatever it is, let's find out what it is and let's work on that, right? Because you're right. The other thing is I might not be able to see this person, you know, every single week. It's not realistic.
Yeah.
Right. But you do what you can. And the other thing is here's the worst part. Here's the worst thing that can happen. A kid or a parent can say, hey, can you see my daughter or my son? Can you see my child? No problem. Right? What's the worst that could happen in terms of, you know, you having to juggle all these things is, you know, and then you see the kid and then you move on, right? But I think that's the hardest thing is definitely like, it's not the mastery of others, it's the mastery of yourself and just doing the best that you can do in the time that you're given, because you're only given 5 hours, man. Not a lot of time.
Yeah. It's a good point. You don't even get the 8 hours of a typical job.
Right.
Wow.
And that's why you do what it's like I imagine a firefighter, ambulance, police officer, you know, somebody working at a hospital. You do the best that you can in the time that you're given. But after that time limit, when the kids go home, right, there's only so much that you can do. Right. Yeah. Obviously, if there's concerns, you know, you call the ministry and things like that, right, which is like oversees the protection of children. But really, I mean, all you have is the time that you're given with them. And in that time, you can definitely make a difference in someone's life. They might even make a difference in your own.
I love it, man. I love it. And I think those messages are some good ones to end on too. because I got to get back to work, unfortunately.
Oh, you do? Okay.
With that said, really appreciate you talking to me about this, man. It's been
Anytime, brother.
really
Anytime.
helpful. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's been really helpful. And hopefully it gives other people or gave other people insight into what it's like to be a school counselor. And hopefully we can get some more really good school counselors out there.
And dude, it's a lifelong journey, right? Like if
Mm.
you want to, it's like Michael Jordan always practices, you
Yeah.
got to read your books, I'm not saying that you don't, I'm just saying, like, for myself, I got to keep myself sharp. Now, so
Yeah.
Tommy, did that answer your questions, or are there any questions left unanswered before you get back to work?
No, you nailed it, man. I only had a few written down, and I kind of just wanted to see where the conversation went. And you brought up some things that I hadn't really even thought about yet, and it's been really good, really insightful. So you nailed it all, dude.
Hey, brother. Well, thank you so much for asking me these questions, and like I say, sounds like I'm glad to hear that it was helpful. So if you
Yeah.
have any other questions, let me know, Mike.
Sounds good, man. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
I know it's time out of your day. It's 1 o'clock your time, or now it might be 2 o'clock your time. But yeah, always appreciative of you sharing your time.
You're welcome, brother. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, man.
Have a wonderful day.
You too, dude. Peace out.
Salute.